So I have this old Genie garage door opener that recently quit working. You hit the button and it just makes a brief hum. Here, listen. This symptom is new, but it's happened twice before, and that started a few months back. I've been getting lucky with just replacing the capacitor located within the motor housing. This large black cylinder is the capacitor, and I've found replacements on Amazon that patches things up for a couple of months. But since the problem keeps reoccurring, I'm thinking it's the motor itself. When I press the remote and try to help the motor get going, it will spin for a second, then shut off. So we've got some issues. This is a bit dangerous, so don't try this at home. Who knows how old this thing is, so I've decided just to replace the whole unit. It's the old screw drive style opener, and I don't even think they make these anymore. It's given me a lot of years of faithful service, but it's time to upgrade. Of course, I ordered a new one from Amazon, and this is the model I've chosen. A Genie Chain Drive 750. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested. This is a complete kit that comes with a new motor, rails, sensors, remotes, and hardware. It also has an exterior keypad and a battery backup, so the motor will still work during a power outage. First thing we've got to do is get the old unit off the ceiling. First, I'll remove the door arm clevis pin from the carriage. Pull the release lever to help it move around easier and it won't be under tension. At the door side, the rail is held into a bracket with one bolt on the bracket holding an extension piece, then two bolts securing that extension to the rail itself. With all those removed, the rail is loose and I'm just going to let it rest on the spring for now until I get the motor side loose. I'll remove the bulbs first so they don't get damaged, then remove the two bolts holding the rail to the motor side. At this point, I tried to separate the rail from the motor drive, but it didn't have enough room to get it all out. So I'll just remove the motor and the rail as an assembly. To do this, I first have to remove all the wiring for the sensors and the wall switch. I'll leave all that wiring attached to the ceiling for now, because I'm going to try to reuse them with the new unit. Once they're loose, remove the bolts holding the motor to the bracket and lower it safely to the floor. Just for reference, it's August in Texas, so it's freaking hot today. I'm going to try to do this as quickly as possible, but the heat is definitely an issue. The new Genie comes with step-by-step instructions that are very detailed. I'll be following them as close as possible to try and show you how to do this yourself. First thing to do is unpack your rails and install the pulley into the slot on one rail, securing it with the cotter pin. Next, install the limit bolt in the pre-drilled hole close to the slot for the pulley. Assemble all rails by inserting the crimped end into the opening of the previous rail. Slide the carriage assembly down the rail with the door arrow facing the pulley. Keep the lever side down. Next, install the sprocket bracket into the rail with the flat side down. Unpack the chain and route it around the rail. The gold adjustment screw will be fed through the pulley side, and the silver adjustment screw will go on the sprocket end. The turnbuckle will be what tensions your chain. Install it into the gold screw first with one full turn. Unlock your carriage and feed the chain through the opening. Then thread the silver screw onto the other end. Hold the chain and turn the turnbuckle only to prevent a twist from occurring in the chain. Tighten by hand until you achieve about a 1/4 inch slack on the opposite side with the turnbuckle in the center of the rail. Still have a ways to go on this one. Once you get the desired slack, tighten the jam nuts on the screws to keep them locked into position. Use two 7/16 inch wrenches and make sure that there is no twist in the chain when you're done. Next, place the motor on the floor, cover side down, and place the rail assembly onto the motor with the flat edge of the sprocket bracket down flat on the motor housing. Be sure to line up the splines on the motor drive as you do this. Secure the bracket with 2 of the 4 bolts provided, then install the securing bracket onto the rail, using the remaining 2 bolts to secure that to the motor housing as well. Next, I'm going to remove the bracket on the header board on the door side. I was planning to reuse this, but the new rail is a different style, so I need to replace it with the bracket provided. Luckily, the mounting holes are the same, so I can just reuse the existing holes in the header board without having to drill new ones. When feeding the new assembly into the bracket, you'll need a way to support the motor end while you get things lined up. I tried 1 bungee cord at first, but then switched to 2 to keep it level. Place the new rail resting on the door springs, then let it hang by the bungees while you line up the bracket. Place the rail between the bracket openings, then secure it with a new cotter pin. I'm going to clean up some of this area on the old bracket to get it ready for motor installation. Lift the motor into position to see what you're dealing with. You'll probably need to do some mock-up and test fitting here to get things correct. When the motor is secured, the rail needs to be level, so I'll need to space the motor assembly down about 1.5 inches from the bracket. If you don't have a bracket and are doing a fresh install, you'll need to get creative with how you mount the motor. Luckily, there are some brackets included, but you may need additional hardware. The kit comes with 2 bolts and 2 lag screws for installation into a stud. Since I had 2 bolts with the old motor, I'll be reusing those. First, I need to cut down the supplied bracket. I'll make 2 marks, then cut the 2 brackets together to get 4 total sections. I'll use these doubled up for more strength. Here are the cut pieces and the bolts, and this is how I will be installing them. You may need to play around with which end the head of the bolt goes in and which side the nut is on, but as long as you can get them tight, you'll be okay. Lift the motor again and make sure it's center lined with the center of the door. Install the brackets and secure the motor. Get this thing tight, you don't want it wiggling around. Once everything is bolted up, check your level again. This is pretty good here. And check that the rail is centered with the door. They should be directly in line with each other. Next, install the extension rail into the carriage assembly with the new cotter pin. I'll replace the angled arm as well, as you can see the new one is at a different angle than the old one. Secure it with a provided pin as well. Next, slide the carriage assembly so that it's about 16 inches from the door. Then line up the 2 brackets. Make sure the bolts are placed as far apart as possible, then tighten them down. Check the angle of the arm starting at the header board, then rotating down towards the arm. Don't start horizontal and rotate up or your readings will be off. You're looking for 20 to 30 degrees here. Adjust it as necessary. This angle is a bit large, so I'll reposition the bolts into different holes. This looks much better. I think we're good. Make sure the bolts are extremely tight. Okay, motor, rail, and door are all looking good. I'm crossing my fingers that I can reuse the optical sensors I already have installed so I don't have to adjust them. Let's see what happens once we get everything wired up. So you don't need to remove this cover to wire the sensors, but I wanted to see what was going on here. The motor is a lot smaller than the previous model, but hopefully it will work just as well. Alright, the wiring for the sensors is too short, so I need to add some extension pieces. If you're not comfortable soldering new wire onto the existing, there's plenty of provided wire to install it. I don't want to rewire everything, so I'm just going to add about 10 inches of length to the existing setup. On the side of the unit, you'll see a cutout with 4 holes for wires. Twist the sensor wires together. Make sure you're only twisting like wired, as in only the 2 with the red stripe or the marking get twisted together, and then the non-marked wires get twisted together. You'll then put them into the 1 and 2 holes. The 3 and 4 holes are for your wall switch. You'll need to push in on this orange piece with a tiny flathead screwdriver in order to get the wire to feed in enough. Then release the lever to lock down the wire. I don't like this style at all, and I would prefer the screws. I did eventually get it to work, but it took some time. The extra red and black wire are for a Wi-Fi addition to use your phone with the opener. This model has Wi-Fi, I believe, but as I already have everything set up to my liking, I'm going to reuse mine. Install the lights and the covers on both sides. Make sure to route the wiring up and through the covers so they don't get pinched. At this point, my main camera became overheated, so I'll start unpacking and installing the remotes, external keypad, and wall switch. Here's the external keypad. It has 2 mounting holes on the back. The upper one to hang it in place, and the lower one to secure it to the wall. Remove the cover and the batteries to gain access to the lower mounting hole. Find the area you want to install the keypad and make sure it's solid. Position the keypad, then use your drill to mark a pilot hole and drill a hole for 1 screw. Screw the upper screw in and hang the keypad from it. Make sure it's tight and not wiggling around. You can't access this one after the second screw goes in. Make another mark in the wood through the lower mounting hole, then rotate the keypad out of the way to drill. Line it back up, then secure it with the new screw. Looking good. Now onto the wall switch. Again, I'm reusing the wiring, so I'm simply going to pop off the old switch and remove the wires, then the bracket. Tighten the wires to the new switch, then secure it to the wall. Before we test anything out, you'll need to lower the door or move it into position so you can lock the carriage assembly onto the turnbuckle. The lever will be facing the door. Next, we need to set the upper and lower limit of the motor travel. To do this, we'll be using the buttons on the motor housing itself. There's a program button and a plus for raising and a minus for lowering. You'll hold the minus button down until the long LED lights up, then release it and it will start to flash. Use the minus button to lower the door where you want it. Once that's complete, press the program button to lock it in. You'll see the long and short LED alternate to show you it has accepted this. Next, press and hold the plus button until the long LED lights up, then release it so it starts flashing. Use the plus button to raise the door where you want it. The door seal should be flush with the opening of your wall. Use the plus and minus buttons to fine-tune any of these positions during this process. Then press the program button to see the alternatingly flashing LEDs letting you know that it's been accepted. Okay, let's give it a test. Uh-oh. Something's not right. Turns out the new unit didn't like my old optical sensors, so I needed to replace them with the provided ones. Just mount them to the wall and wire them up with the old wiring if you have it. Otherwise, you'll need to wire them with the new wire provided. It was too hot to remove the old sensors, so I just positioned the new ones right above. Make sure when you're done, the two sensors are level and pointed towards each other. Okay, let's try this again. Hey, it's working! On to the remotes. Remove the battery tag on each one. Then press and hold the program button on the motor. Release it and you'll see a purple LED flash. Stand about 5 feet away and press whichever button on the remote you want to operate the door. Press it slowly about 4 to 5 times, then test to make sure it's working. Repeat the process for the second remote. For the keypad, you'll do the same thing. Press and hold the program button, then release it for a purple LED flash. Then run outside and press the pre-programmed code 357, then the open close button slowly 4 to 5 times again until the door operates. To change the code on the keypad, press 357, then program, and whatever code you want, then press the program again. Make sure you test it to make sure it has taken the new code, and yes, I have already changed mine. Next, place a 2x4 flat on the ground and close the garage door. The board should be in the center of the door, and when the door contacts it, it should raise back up so you don't squish any kids or anything like that. That's working fine, so now I'll test the Wi-Fi attachment and make sure everything's still hooked up correctly. Success! Okay, the last thing to do after all that setup is installing the battery backup onto the unit. You have to make sure everything is programmed and otherwise perfect before installing the battery. Unplug the motor from the outlet, then slide the battery tabs into the top mounting slots on the motor housing. Connect the connector at the top port. You'll have to feel around for this as you won't be able to see it here. Then use the provided self-tapping screws to secure it to the motor assembly. There are no holes in the cover, the screws will tap themselves in. Then plug the unit back in and you're finished. You should wait about 48 hours before trying to test the battery backup. Well, there you have it, folks. The installation of a Genie 750 chain drive garage door opener. Like I said, there was an existing unit to go off of here, so a lot of the wiring could be reused. If you're installing this fresh where there was no opener before, you'll need to do quite a bit of mock-up to get it to work properly. This project did take the better half of a day, but the heat was definitely a factor in that. Otherwise, it was just basic tools and following the instructions to the T in order to get it set up correctly. I hope you found the video informative and that it gave you the knowledge and confidence to tackle a project like this by yourself. If not, consult the help of a friend or a professional. If this did help you out in some way, be sure to give the video a like and consider subscribing so I can keep bringing content like this to your YouTube experience. As always, thanks for watching.